Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, I have with me James Zieger, who is also one of the admins for Systems in Sync, a Facebook group that talks about integrations and operation management. And this is usually associated with real estate investing and getting systems set up for investors to be able to be more efficient with the way they do things, generate leads, and maintain the management of all of their properties and assets. How are you doing today, James?
Hey, not too bad, brother. How are you doing? Hey, thanks for having me here.
Oh, you know what? It's a genuine pleasure. I really like having people on here. I get to talk to people, learn things, and help people in the audience learn things as well.
Absolutely, man.
I'd love to be able to pick your brain on this today. Integrations, operations, what led to this? How did you get to find that that was your thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it was a good couple years in the making, figuring out exactly where it is that I fit in and getting comfortable, getting in tune with myself and being able to grow and scale myself from there. Fun fact, I didn't start in integrations actually when I first started getting into this whole endeavor. I made kind of that same mistake that I see a lot of people as well make, and more so a lot of people that I end up speaking to is what I found interesting is most people tend to choose the one that they want to do or they think they should do. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, "Oh, I'm a closer." Turns out I can't close. 2 years figuring that out after a couple of years of just making mistake after mistake and figuring out what I can and cannot do, reassessed a little bit about who I was and standing a little bit more of what I actually enjoyed to do or enjoyed doing, sorry. And messing around with computers and systems and software is just something I've done as a pastime my whole life. Never thought I'd be able to make any success out of that aside from slaving away 14 hours, 18 hours a day, but hey, here we are.
That's cool that you figured out eventually what it was you're doing. Why was the closer thing appealing to you at first?
Same thing that most of the other avatars actually appeal to a lot of people in the beginning is my thought process was that was the quickest way to generate income.
Got it.
Like,
Okay.
oh, if I just master this, man, I'll be golden. Turns
It's
out
like
it
you
doesn't work that way.
thought you'd found the golden goose. All right. It's interesting. And so there's a process of transformation along the way, I suppose, where you started to realize that this isn't actually the path that I want to be on. And there's other things that I should be focusing on because I'm already adept at those. Were there any points in time where it was like, oh, this is why I need to change, or maybe I should let this thing go?
It was more so through hard lessons, honestly, because we'd reached a point. So my wife Haley, who does a lot of this with me as well, she was actually the one that pushed me into being an entrepreneur and jumping into real estate. In the beginning, I'm like, no, it's half of it's a scam. I don't really understand it. Still closed minded, and it goes back to that phrase that they say, "Happy wife, happy life." So I was like, all right, whatever, we'll
Yeah.
give it a shot. That first year was extremely rough. I had traded working 70, 80 hours a week in the restaurant to 70, 80 hours a week slaving away on phones and not being able to move from in front of my computer to desk. And it just didn't seem like it was really going anywhere. The tough pill to swallow that it was me. I was the reason why. Tell yourself all the same thing that most other people is like, oh, maybe the leads are just junk, maybe the lists are junk. I'm talking to people, like having good quality conversations, but they just don't seem to go anywhere.
Like what's missing, right?
And it's kind of one of those things where, like, at that time, I didn't see that it was me. Growing into a new skill, you start getting that big head syndrome. And when things really weren't panning out, it was like, oh no, I have to go back to a W 2. So
Mm.
that's what I ended up doing. Completely pulled out, went back to the W 2. And I want to say it was about 3 weeks into working that new job that I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this to myself again. And you hit that realization where it's like, I got to go back into making something work, but I can't do it the same way I was before. Made me go back into that reflection mode. And here's all the areas that I went wrong, a lot of the mistakes that I made, and realizing that I can't pick up a lot of those skills just because it's not something that was natural to me. And I tried to force myself and it just didn't work out. And I started to explore a little bit and see what other people in some of these communities that we're in, were doing to start becoming successful in the entrepreneurship in the real estate world. And that's where I saw integrations. I can get behind that. I like computers. I like doing all that fun stuff. The first go, I had attempted to put together multiple teams, specifically in wholesaling. And on top of trying to close and do all the cold calling, I also built out all of our systems that we used. So I'm like, all right, easy peasy, I can do that. Now I started seeing some of the bigger people within communities that are way ahead of me, and I'm like, man, I'm not that good. I don't think I'm gonna be cut out for this. But as I started to kind of fit into that role and my lane of comfortability, other opportunities started opening up, which you start to fall in line a little bit easier and you kind of stick to the lane of where my skill sets were. And then I started to realize that it's not that the other people are like, well ahead of me or better than me. They were just utilizing different skill sets. And where I had initially started on the lower tier, lower level of what an integrator is, which is dealing with those backend systems and building out the pipelines, I started asking myself the same questions. Like, I know I can do more. I know I can be more, but what else is there to this world? And it kind of started opening up my eyes to the different levels of an integrator and the integration side of a business, and pairing that with extreme personal development and growth. I forced myself to fast track about a year of personal development into 3 months. So pairing that between with learning and understanding the different levels of integrators, I started really pushing myself a little bit more and getting a more in-depth understanding. And
I imagine the people that are listening, some of them are probably in the same place that you were at when you were trying to focus on a skill that you weren't able to develop very well because it wasn't in your skill set. What would you say to those people that are trying to find or identify that thing that they can double down on and have success with?
for those people, I would say take a look at your some of the skill sets that you do have. Most people coming into it are coming from the W-2 world. And this was something that I didn't connect in the beginning. Was I come from a culinary background. So that's what I've done since high school, and then getting out of high school, all of my work has been that. And I looked at it as face value. I'm coming into real estate, I'm coming into a whole new thing. I don't know my left hand from my right hand. So you don't think about the skills that you do have, soft skills and hard skills that you've picked up along the way from your W-2. I would assess those and see where those apply in this industry. For example, coming from the culinary world, I didn't understand obviously at that time that I could be a high level business level integrator, but a lot of the skills that I have, more so the soft skills that allow me to seamlessly integrate. See what I did there? So this position were those skills that I picked up in high level management in the restaurant industry.
That's interesting. I can see that a little bit from my background as a W-2 employee with the manufacturing side of things, because I can see some of the, how would you phrase this? I'm not sure what the word is. It's like similarities, I guess. That's not exactly the word, but we'll go with similarities between the processes and SOPs that happen in manufacturing and the need for repeatability and how it would reflect into a real estate business or a lending business. And so I can see where you're coming from with that. I think that's excellent advice.
No, 100%. And I love that you have that frame of thought and that understanding coming into it. In my humble opinion, I myself included, I feel like most people, when they do decide to make the jump and dive into it, they overcomplicate it a little bit because again, it's fresh, it's new. There's a lot of information that's out there, and you are drinking from a fire hose,
Yeah.
whether that being YouTube University, whether that being jumping right into mentorships and communities, without really figuring out how to filter the information that you're paying attention to. But no
Okay.
matter which lane you pick, whether it be wholesaling, whether it be buy and hold, whether it be fix and flip, whether it be being a connector, each one of those is you have to build a business, and the foundation doesn't change.
That foundation is
Systems and processes.
that's what I was thinking. So it's interesting that you say that as well, that there's all these different things, but at the core of everything, it's going to be systems and processes. And I like that because of my machining background and my understanding of the Industrial Revolution and how that was jump-started by the fact that they standardized measurement. And the fact that we all were using different systems of measurement made repeatability a big issue. I think in France alone, they had over 600 different forms of measuring things. And so when they established the meter as a standard unit of measurement, things started to change because all of a sudden other people across the world could repeat the processes that some other manufacturer was going through.
No, 100%. It's kind of interesting to think about, and it started to become a really big passion of mine of really understanding simple foundations. And I actually ended up starting to, and it's not a pitch or anything like that, but I'm starting to, hopefully launching soon, a program that I put together myself, which is taking a lot of that. You have the EOS model. There are people that are familiar with SWOT, SWOT, and some of the things to that nature. And again, it's like drinking from a fire hose, and you can go down rabbit holes. The
Oh, yeah.
EOS model itself, you can go down rabbit holes, and I did that for the first couple weeks. So same thing there is putting together and implementing something that takes that information and filters it into a glass that you can drink from rather than the fire hose, and simplifies it. And going through all of that process, like my team, man, I feel bad for them at some points because I'm like, hey guys, fill out another form. Hey guys, fill this out. Make sure you do this before the end of the week. We got to gather some of this data and we'll talk about it later. But it's been very interesting to see some of the things, like how important it is right from the beginning to establish, core company values and determining what your company culture is. And it looks different for each business, but just having that foundation determines where you're headed in your business. And you don't think that it's something that's actually that crucial. I know a lot of people that get so far into their business and they're setting up systems, they're going straight to exactly what softwares they need to be using. And then once it starts to get to that point where it's now we need to start figuring out how to scale this thing, and I want to start bringing people in, it's extremely difficult to bring people in without understanding what the values are, what the culture is, and understanding what does that framework actually look like for your business.
I can kind of get what you're saying here. The word culture is probably kind of ambiguous to some people. What would be some examples of what you're talking about?
I'll preface with one of the mistakes that I made in the beginning was thinking that I dictated the company culture, which we don't. Your company culture is defined by your people and your systems and processes. Now, again, we start to overcomplicate things when we think systems and processes. But when you're first setting up, you want to determine your core processes. What are the major functions within your business? Now, how that correlates with the company culture, interestingly enough, and I figured that this is where it was going to sway even within our team and our business, is there's four main types, and we fell under the category of the fluffy culture is what it's called, aka the happy accident. Now again, remember, your company culture is derived of two parts. It's people and processes.
People and processes.
Yes. So that meant that we all came together because we aligned with values. Picking our company core values was really simple because we all think the same way, we all feel the same way, we all understand the things the same way. We allow the same types of people to influence us based off of their values. So it's very easy to pinpoint. The processes, not so much. We already have some things that were predetermined, but again, those have to be tailored to the actual function of our business, the core business. So the happy accident, the fluffy culture, means that we all aligned on the individual. So our people were aligned, but our processes and our systems were not aligned.
And with the processes and the systems, Is that going to be tied into the concept of KPIs and performance metrics, or are we thinking more along the lines of software and other things like that for how things get done?
You get to the KPIs and the metrics. I always have interesting conversations with people about the softwares and things that you use within your business because I have a motto that you build your systems around your business, not your business around your systems. Because if you go with the latter, you're going to end up limiting yourself.
Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. I'm actually going to note that down.
but in order to get to like your key metrics and your KPIs, you have to know exactly what and why you're tracking. So when I do speak about processes, I'm talking about core processes. Now, for anybody that's ever read books like Rocket Fuel or Traction, which, fun fact, are actually two books in the series, the EOS series, they talk about integrator and visionary relationship, but they also talk about mapping of the seats within your business. So that's things like marketing, then you have sales, then you have operations. Now, those are your core business processes. Those are the core things that make your business run
And that's marketing, sales, and operations.
for most businesses. Now, our team, we removed sales and we implemented business relations. So now that's one of our core processes.
So you
So,
swapped sales out for business relations.
yes, it's kind of in a similar, have to start to become good at sales to actually formulate and maintain relationships with people that are inherently doing anything within your business. But right from the beginning of switching and implementing EOS and any sort of structure in our business, that's what we focused on first was core values, determining company culture, and then our core processes. We have Haley, my wife, who's phenomenal at marketing. She's also really good at strategy and putting together strategic frameworks. So that's a core process, marketing and strategic planning. The second core process is operations. It's everything that happens within the core business, which we acquire properties. So everything from once you get the contract signed and ready to go, you need somebody calling, dealing with the TCs, dealing with title company, dealing with insurance companies and stuff like that. Those are the main operations. Then you have the team that falls under that, which we have deep dive underwriter, and then we have a VA that does data entry to make their jobs a little bit easier. Actually saves them about 13 hours a week in work.
Oh, that's really good then.
So understanding those core processes, you then can start building out your sub processes underneath and building out your team and then getting down to the point where you know exactly what metrics you need to be tracking.
Very cool. I guess my other question for that is tied into the metrics, identifying which ones are important. How do you gauge the feedback or look at the things that you're doing and decide this is a metric that's important to track?
A lot of it is the way that we do it is we have Jim, one of the partners, who one of his superpowers is identifying bottlenecks in the business. So he can quickly, very, very quickly determine where we're having an issue if we're not getting the outcome that we're looking for. And then we're able to come together, have the conversation around that and resolve it. Now, during that process, we'll be able to see like, this bottleneck ended up happening because we weren't tracking this metric. Now we need to make sure that we have this metric in place and we're tracking to make sure this doesn't happen again. But since we weren't tracking this, what were we spending our time on? We have these four things that we were spending our time tracking. Out of those four things, because we don't want to add on to the manual labor and our time tracking additional things. Out of these four things, what is either least important or not important at all? There's no reason that we should be spending our time tracking that metric. Let's say it's trying to come up with a good example. Let's say it's something like very, very simple in regards of how something is moving through a pipeline. Maybe we're tracking a metric on the automation and we determine that we don't really need to track that metric because the system's already doing it for us. So there's
Mm.
no need for us to manually be doing it. Let's get rid of that and then make sure that we're tracking this new metric that we realize is going to prevent us from having this bottleneck in the future.
And I can see the utility in it as well. So you go from being an attempted closer to working in operations, and then you started to have the fluffy culture, and you said that your systems and processes weren't quite the right way they should be. What did you guys do to resolve that? Was this process that you're talking about?
Yeah, determining and setting up those core processes. When we first got together, we were already two established entities that kind of merged into one. The other two partners of ours, Jim and Jeff, they already had their business started. They already had an operations manager at that point. They already had Jim, who's also another phenomenal integrator, set up the physical systems. So things like the Gmail with Google Sheets, with Trello, and had a lot of automation going in there already. I had an underwriter, my knowledge and expertise, and then we had Haley for marketing and strategic planning. So we kind of saw where it's like we know what we're missing and what we need. Now we know and understand what they're missing and their need, and it's like it's a perfect fit. So let's kind of line that up. Now, in doing so, not everything was on the same page. We were looking at different markets than they were looking at. We had different ideas for a buy box than they had. Had a different idea of what an architectural system would look like compared to what Jim had there. Now, at first, we broke our business down twice. At first, it was all right. Well, let's remove all the clutter and then focus solely on the system that Jim has built out, and let's hit the ground running with that since it's already basically automated. Then, as we started making other adjustments, this is why I go back to build your systems around your business, not your business around your systems. As we started making other adjustments in the business, that system starts to become outdated very quickly. So now we have to figure out what we're figuring out right now. Now that we've taken a step back, we broke the business down again. We started from core values, company culture. We started dictating what the compartments are within the business, which are the core processes. Now things are navigate a little bit differently than they used to, which means our whole architect has to change. So we're in
Okay.
the process of swapping systems over completely. And in doing so, there's going to be differences in what you were using to what you are using. So there's going to be limitations. I'm swapping to go high level, and there are things that go high level can't natively do that our old system, the way that we were set up, could do. So now it's kind of tweaking and
A little bit
finalizing
conflict
that
at first.
process.
You said that part of your culture is going to be the processes and systems. Does changing your processes and systems mid-business
It
change your
does
culture
change.
then?
Yes, it does. So your business culture is one of those things that you want to take a look at. I recommend at least quarterly, and you want to set which culture you do want to be. Most of us want to be at a well-rounded culture, which means our people and our processes both align and things are running smoothly. It's going to be very easy for your business to bounce back and forth as you switch focus. But I would recommend taking a look at that quarterly and making sure that you're aligned to where you want to be to at least get to a well-rounded culture.
Well, I think that's excellent advice. Just the fact that it's something that people might not have been aware of, and now they can like think about it and say, I can look at this thing now and determine what the changes need to happen are when they might not have even known what they didn't know. So that's a really cool thing to talk about today.
Oh,
I guess
100%.
my next question would be, what does the future look like for your guys' company as operations and integrations? I mean, that's the role you're taking on. Where are you guys going with this?
We have a lot of really big, really big plans. A majority of it is focusing on the core business, which is property acquisitions.
Hmm.
But we've already been working on verticals and bolt-ons within the business. So I have systems in sync, which will also be including the other team members as that progresses. Jim and Haley have put together the creative deal underwriting group. That's going to turn into something as well in the future here, which is a vertical. Now, mind you, like these bolt-ons and these things that we're adding, we're not going and starting complete different businesses. Everything that we end up coming up with or going full throttle on are solving a bottleneck within our core business. So it's feeding into that. But our core business where we see it over the next 10 years and what we're gearing up for is going to be a collaborative business with coaches, with mentors, with wholesalers, with lenders. It's going to be pretty big.
Very cool.
And that's not to sound big headed. So I apologize there, but
Well, I like the idea of dreaming big. One of my favorite quotes is shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land amongst the stars. And so it's
oh yeah,
definitely good to have a big vision and to work towards it and break everything down into smaller goals and always have something to progress towards.
100%.
Well,
And if you do set that big picture goal, one of my favorite people that I follow is John Maxwell. He says to make that big picture expandable because things are going to change along the way,
I
but
like
make
that.
sure it's expandable and you can continue to grow off of it.
I really like that. It's cool. One of the things that actually prompted me to learn about entrepreneurship and get into business myself was reading that book, 12 Rules for Life by Dr. Jordan Peterson. And there's a chapter in it where he talks about one of his rules, and it's stand up straight with your shoulders back. And when I started doing that, I went from staring at my feet and trying to hide away and be a small person out of the way to looking at the horizon and seeing infinite possibility in front of my vision. And it was interesting, the mindset shift that changed when instead of staring at the ground, I was staring into the infinite possibility of what's there. And all of a sudden, I started to see opportunity and abundance when I didn't see it before. So it's really cool that you talk about an expanding vision. I like that.
No, I love that. I love that thought process, your thought process around it too, because I know we've had the chance to speak a couple times and we've known about each other for a couple years now. We knew that we existed, but didn't really have those conversations. And I've got to see like, an immeasurable amount of growth even within yourself. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that from you if you don't mind and if you have time to go into that a little bit as well. Because I've definitely seen a difference in confidence and I've seen a difference in the way that you're navigating and the things that you're doing, and I think it's awesome.
I appreciate that. I can go over that a little bit. I think that the best place to start would be the fact that when I went out to go to college for the first time when I was 18 years old, I ended up rooming with a schizophrenic roommate. I didn't know this at the time when I was roommates with him, but he came home drunk one night and he was off his meds and we got into a fight. He accused me of stealing one of his music CDs. I don't remember exactly what the article was, but I separated myself from him and went into my room to cool off. And I guess he didn't cool off because the next thing I knew, he had kicked down my bedroom door and I was tucked up underneath my computer desk writing an email to my mom at the time. And I look at him as he comes into the room. I look back at my computer screen and bam, he hit me with his fist. And I just laid there on the bed for a second. Then he left the room and I woke up the next day with a huge shiner, right? And my teeth felt funny, but I'm like, well, I got a shiner. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to work. And so I did. And that weekend, it was like 5 or 6 days later, my mom came to visit. She says, we're going to go get this looked at because that doesn't look like it's as minimal as you were making it out to be. And when we went to the urgent care, they told me that my whole right side of my skull was shattered into 23 fragments in my cheekbone,
Oh, wow.
3 pieces around my right eye socket, and 2 hairline fractures into the left side of my face. And the doctor told me that if I put my thumb under my top teeth and just gave it a little tug, everything would have slid forward because that's how broken it was. And so we went into surgery that day because if we didn't get it taken care of, the doctor says the only thing that was keeping my eye in place was the swelling. And if the swelling goes down, the jagged bones of my broken skull would have severed the optic nerve and I would have lost my right eye. And so that was kind of scary when I first found out about it, especially since that I'd been going around to work and school for an entire week. And earlier that day, I was getting up off the couch or something, and my father had almost elbowed me on accident in the face. And if he had done that, my eyeball would have popped like a grape. That's what the doctor said. So 9 months worth of recovery physically. They put 3 titanium plates in my face and a ceramic plate on the left side, which I still have. The titanium plates were removed because as the bones started healing, the screws started pushing their way out. And I like to joke that that was the only time in my life that I could literally say I had a screw loose, and it was true. But ultimately, that it led to a lot of mental recovery that I needed to do, because I didn't see ahead of time that this kid was going to try to end me. And because I didn't have any way to predict that, I kind of adopted this mentality that I didn't have the way of predicting whether someone else is going to do the same thing. And so it was very hard to talk to people or to be around other people, even though I was doing it a little bit because I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which I'm a member. And I went out and talked to people for 2 years. So I think that helped a little bit. But once I got back, I just go to work, come home, stay in the house the entire time. And I don't know. Over time, I eventually realized that there's more growth to be had. I was tired of being withdrawn inside myself and not being connected to other people. And I realized that I was going to have to make some kind of a change to leave my comfort zone and work on that problem directly instead of just letting it control my life. And I think the change came when I realized that we all have this mechanism that we use every day called suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is a mechanism that we use to watch fiction and go along with the story, even though things in that story are unrealistic. Examples that come to mind are there's no such thing as orcs from Lord of the Rings, and there's no such thing as magic from Harry Potter, but we accept the premise of them being realistic in that story so that the plot can move forward. And I realized that I could hijack that mechanism to treat myself as a person that I needed to take care of. And that even if I wasn't brave, I could act brave by using this mechanism. And so by making those kinds of changes, it was hard, but over time it got easier because I was going out and doing things in spite of fear instead of avoiding them because of it. And so that leads us here today. I started the podcast because it was one of those things that I felt I needed to do to heal from the trauma that I'd suffered. And I started to become an entrepreneur because I needed to talk to people and I needed to learn about money. And there's all these things that come along with it that I wanted for my personal development, aside just from a monetary gain.
It's just amazing. And I know I don't think we've ever actually spoke that in depth about the backstory there, but it's kind of those things almost like, and it's, if you look at it from positive perspective, and I know it's always weird and taboo to talk about things that way, is almost like that situation was almost like a blessing in disguise for where you are now, where you're going in life.
Yeah. You know what? I had a realization, I'd say maybe a year ago, that I was grateful that it happened to me and not some poor girl that would have died being hit like that. Because if he was that violent, it was a matter of time before he hurt somebody. And the fact that I was
Right.
able to take that hit and recover from it is a better alternative to someone who was less able to take that hit and to have their entire life ruined by it. And it was a liberating realization to have that.
I think it's amazing that you were able to take all of that and then go through the development and go through the healing and really push through and do like even a majority of the stuff that you're doing today, which again I say it's awesome and it's amazing to be able to witness firsthand and see. Do you do you feel though, do you feel as though like pushed you a little bit harder, like it pushes you a little bit harder to give it a little bit more of your energy and effort to grow both as an entrepreneur but also like that personal development space?
And hard to say because you can't go back and repeat life in a different vein. Split testing
Right.
when it comes to your life. You get one shot, and then just the way the cards lie is what you get to look back on. But I'd like to think that it does. I have an understanding of my own resiliency now. I know that I can take a hit and get back up again. And I know that even though there's been a lot of fear in my life and anxiety because of the harsh physical trauma that I went through, I'm still here. I'm still okay. And as long as I get to wake up every morning, I get to try again. And I think there's a blessing in that, to be able to have that perspective. because things can always get worse, but they can always get better too. Because I've been in dark parts of my life, and there was even a time when I was younger that I considered ending everything, but I didn't do it. And I thank God every day that I didn't, because now I have a beautiful son and a beautiful wife that loves me. And I feel more enriched and fulfilled by my pursuit of entrepreneurship than I have ever felt in my life. And just everything is good.
I love that. I know we were talking about a little bit ago, those big goals. Where do you see yourself going over these next, 10, 15, 20 years with everything that you're doing right now?
Yeah, fuzzy in some sense, but also clear, because I know I'm not going to give up. I went to my whiteboard when I first started my business and I asked this question: what are all the things I could do that would guarantee that I fail? And the first thing I came up with was give up, like the number one thing. So as long as I don't do that, we've eliminated the highest point of failure. The other one was to try to go it alone. So the fact that I get to go and do real estate and make meaningful connections with other people, that's been a real big thing. And then it's just, I'm looking to help people eventually with the profits that I make, because while money is obviously part of the goal, it's not for the sake of wealth by itself. I want to be able to help people that can't help themselves. And that's really where a lot of meaning in life comes from, I believe, is being able to make a meaningful impact on the lives of other people. And if I can help even just one person, an entire world would change. So, yeah, see if we can't change 100 worlds or 1,000. Why not? And maybe somebody can look at my experience and draw inspiration from it and go out and build something even bigger. That'd be really cool.
That's amazing. Even just with what you're describing there, honestly, and I know we've never spoke about this part of it either, is what you just explained is one of the I'm trying to articulate it the best way. One of the greatest foundational components of being a true leader. And I don't mean that as in like a business owner or just somebody that can, mentorship, but like true, like a leader within the world. One of the, because it reminded me of a story that Maxwell had told about where he was going to a country club to talk. And when he got there, he had found out that there was only 10 people there. And somebody that came with him, which was a really good friend, was like, "Are you really going to do this for only 10 people? Like, are you going to, you're carving out 3 hours of your time today. Are you really going to do that for only 10 people that showed up? Like, bigger than this, like, know your name, they know who you are. You could be out there filling up a stadium." And his response to that was, there's two people here that are young and they're getting ready to finish high school. Out of the 10 people that are here, I'm doing this for them.
Mm,
If I can take the next 3 hours and just speak to those two people, I'd do it all over again because I'm gonna go change those two people's lives. Never mind that only 10 people showed up or the amount of other people that are in the room. And he had ended up recapping that story with saying, for one, what you wanna do for many.
yeah.
And I think it's powerful. It's very powerful.
I agree with that. My wife and I, we struggled for over 8.5 years to finally have a child. And for a long time, I didn't think it was going to happen. But a big part of the journey for me is to document my growth and my progress so that I can show my son through permanent video on the internet that I wasn't all put together at first. And that as I had my journey, I picked things up and I made developmental changes and setting an example that, hey, whatever you set your mind to, you can do as long as you're consistent and you put in the reps. And I can't just talk the talk. I got to walk the walk.
100%. And that's you brought that up too, is I mean, even on and that's something that gets brought up a lot. I've on Zooms with people where they won't turn the camera on or they'll want to reschedule the Zoom because their kids are in the background or, it had to be a snow day, so they didn't expect their kids to be home from school that day.
Mhm.
If there's any advice that I can give to anybody out there that's jumping into entrepreneurship is don't be afraid of that. You know how I've been in I go to, how many Zooms I've jumped in, and the people have their cameras on, and the kids are jumping around in the background. The kids are coming in and saying hi. It's it's amazing. And one of the things that I've been forever grateful for with taking this leap, jumping into communities and jumping in on the side is not only does my son get to see what his mother and I are doing and what we're building and the vision that we're after, but he's seeing all of you guys do it as well. And he firsthand gets to jump into conversations and say hi to people. He gets to learn from other people, some skills that he's not going to learn in school.
Yeah.
That I myself in the beginning is like, I'm doing this so that I can afford the time to be able to teach him these things, but I put myself in these rooms to where now I have additional resources that are also teaching my son some of those very fundamental and foundational things that I wanted to be able to teach him. Away from the computer, put my headphones down, and it was during an underwriting Zoom. And this was last year, so he was 7. And he was like, "Hey, there's numbers on the screen. That's a spreadsheet." And he picks the headphones up and he sits down right in front of the computer and he sat there for over an hour, just and trying to understand how to underwrite a property.
I like that.
And those are things that you don't get when you're scared or when you fall into that fear of pushing forward and going after this path just because you have, a scare that it's going to look some sort of way. No, we all go through it. We're all humans. And I don't know. I just think it's amazing.
Yeah, no, the point that you brought up though is that we like to think that we have a lot of control over what our children learn, but they're going to be absorbing information from all kinds of sources all over the place. And the fact that you have this community of entrepreneurs in your periphery means that one of those sources of information are going to be the people that are doing business around you. And so that's really cool. I never thought about that before. I like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you go down to the psychology of it, like those times and if it was in daycare I mean, even with family, it's like where you will listen to your sister or your brother or your mother or your father before they'll listen to you. Or like you'll tell them like 10 times do something, they don't do it. But then auntie tells them to do it and they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same over here. It's like we for kids over and over again, like, hey, you need to be learning this skill or that skill, and it might not sink in. But it's the same thing. So this is how it ended up clicking for me as well. I'm not gonna lie. And earlier I said like tough pills to swallow, like I'm the press. I've had multiple people tell me that. And it took the one right person to tell me that for it to sink in. So there's a lesson that you can learn within, allowing to be opened up and have an understanding of all of this. But you have to have that same you gotta have to kind of navigate way, if that makes sense. And I don't mean to talk in circles, but being able to allow to have other people that can influence you and tell you these things, and you have to be open to like hearing some of that feedback and applying that.
I think that's excellent advice. And I think that's a big part of the why of a lot of people that are in entrepreneurship is they want to pass the skills and the knowledge to their children. So I really like the perspective and the topic today. I know we don't have much more time for our interview today, but is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we decide to get off today?
Well, I'm gonna end up putting this up on my stuff too. So if anybody that's watching this video at any point, if you guys feel as though you're stuck anywhere or you need further understanding or maybe point you in the right direction or talk you through any situation, um, reach out to Nathaniel or reach out to myself. If you're watching from my platform, I'll have all of the ways to get a hold of Nathaniel linked in there. And then I believe we're going to do the same thing vice
Yep.
versa. Your network truly is your net worth. So don't be afraid to speak to people. Don't be afraid to try to figure out what rooms you need to be in.
And most of us don't bite.
Hard anyway. Unless you ask. Some people are into some weird things.
Yes.
I don't know.
Awesome. Well, on that topic, where would people go to connect with you, James?
I try to keep my stuff very simple. And it's at so James Zieger, Zieger. And You can use that on Facebook. You'll be able to find me. You can use it on Instagram. You'll be able to find me. I'm on YouTube as well. And what about you, brother?
And then mine is just at Nathaniel_Opoulos. And then Facebook's slightly different. It's Nathaniel Giovanni-Opoulos, but I'll put that in the description as well. My name's spelled a specific way, so if you don't spell it right, you might not find me. But definitely, any kinds of questions you have, send me a DM. I go over my messages every day, and I'm always trying to form new relationships and friendships with people.
That's what we're here for.
I really appreciate you coming on the show today, James. It's been a genuine pleasure having this conversation with you. And I just want to let the audience know that this has been the Pot of Gold podcast. We talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you again for having me.